Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you about teaching English language learners mathematics and just some of the tips and tricks that I've learned recently, and then some of the do's and some of the don'ts of what to do with those students. So I like to start off with the situation that says, put yourself in a student's shoes for a minute. Imagine that you used to love math class in Honduras, yet in your American classroom you feel bored, exhausted, and frustrated. In fact, instead of feeling smart and capable, you're actually starting to believe you'll never be a good student in your American math classroom. So, that quote just kind of really struck me because just depending on where you live is depending how confident you are in your skills, and all because of language. And that's just this huge barrier that is so hard to overcome, but we have to really try super hard to make it equal for each other. So who are we focusing on in this today? Our English language learners, or ELLs. And there are students who are unable to communicate fluently or learn effectively in English, who often come from non-English speaking homes and backgrounds, and who typically require specialized or modified instruction in both the English language and their academic courses. Something that's super hard is that they come to school and they are being taught so much English and they're being exposed to so much English all day, but then they go home and then they're being exposed again to their home language, which is super important that they don't lose their home language, but they're also not being reinforced with that English language. So there's always that torn between both, especially in the summertime when my students, they go home from school and then they're at home and they're for an entire 2 to 3 months they're being exposed to only their family's native language. They lose so much of that core English language that they have been working on so hard for. So the beginning of the school year is always extremely difficult. This problem here was kind of just a great eye-opener for me to see why would something be so difficult for a student who's learning English. And the first thing to do is to analyze this problem. And it says, Samuel bought 3 bags of oranges with 7 oranges in each bag. How many oranges did he buy? And when you think about this, like, what would be super difficult for a student who is learning English? And one of the main things is this word buy. Our English language has so many homophones. So when they are introduced to words like that, they're not really sure what the question is asking them because there are so many versions of these different words that we have. So when you are having your students decipher and analyze different problems, they are going to have some trouble when they're being exposed to words that didn't mean 100 different things in their own language, and now they're expected to know, number one, what the word is, but number two, which version of the word is it, and then once they figure out that version, what does that even mean? So it's going to take a lot more steps for them to understand and decipher different math problems. This is a map of the United States and where English language learners are, and the percentage of schools and public schools who have English language learners. So here in Pennsylvania, we are just at 3.3%. I don't know why I felt like this was a little bit higher than, I personally feel like it's a little bit higher, but I guess not compared to other states. So, in my own classroom, I have 2 English language learners. Last year I had 1, which I guess in perspective, that's 1 to every 24 students. So that's really low. But I still feel like we are being exposed, and every year will continue. That percentage is just going to get higher. So I thought that this was really interesting for what states really have a stronger impact than others. So some misconceptions, and I always think about this when I'm thinking about ELLs, because many of my coworkers will say, well, numbers are numbers. So one country numbers are the same, the way we solve math problems are the same. And I always wondered, is that true? So actually I spoke to our ESL teacher in our school district, and she wrote down and I had emailed her and I just said, hey, is there any tips that you could tell me about teaching mathematics to ELL students? And the first thing she said was, the bottom line is that math is not universal as many people believe. And right away I was like, whoa, this is not what people usually think. Even commas and decimals are used differently in other countries, which can cause a lot of confusion. In Guatemala, I couldn't really help with math, even at the elementary level, because they had a different way of doing things. They also write their ones with a hook on them, like a 7, and then a 7 always has a line through it. If it doesn't have a line through it, then it's a 1. I made some mistakes with this when writing checks out, and the bank would not accept them. Yikes. These are just a few examples of how tricky this can be. I'm sure there are tons. Word problems are especially difficult because there are usually hidden cultural differences that you don't even think about, but are very confusing to an ELL. Also, there are cultures that don't use numbers like we write them, so they have to learn that as well. So I think one of the biggest eye-openers for me is that, yes, we all have numbers, but they are still different. And the way that we learn math is still different. So we have to remember that while math might come easier to an ELL versus reading and spelling and speaking, it's still going to be difficult, and we have to give them the support that they need to be successful. So what do we do? How do we help them? To start with the list of do's. So first, introduce mathematics vocabulary before the lesson, not throughout, but before the lesson to get them started, get them some of those pre-teaching skills. And to be aware of those multiple meaning words, those homophones that will cause confusion. Like, for example, draw a table. So my students, if I would say draw a table, I could pick a picture of both of my students picking up a piece of paper, drawing a table that they eat at for dinner, which you can't blame them. I mean, that's what they're used to. Next is provide multiple representations of vocabulary and chart them. So give them modeling, provide them with visuals of what that word means, give them symbols, numbers, describe what that word is, give them examples, give them non-examples, things like that, and have them posted in your room for them to be able to use throughout the school year. Number 3 was really interesting. It says expect them to participate. So have that expectation. Don't just let them sit and don't let them be quiet because they're a little confused. Have them be involved as much as they possibly can. So maybe using your sentence stems, think, pair, shares, guided math groups to give them that intervention that they need. Number 4 is encourage ELLs to represent their work with multiple representations. So if we're teaching them multiple representations, let's expect it back from them. See their really true deep understanding of those concepts. The next couple do's are use manipulatives to make word problems realistic. This is huge. When working with my 2 ELL students in my classroom, the moment I pull out manipulatives and start showing them what different problems mean, it's an instant click. So manipulatives are super important. Think alouds. So show them how to solve a problem, think through your problem with them, and show them how you're thinking, your brain, how you're going to solve this. So that way, when it's their turn, they can kind of remember how you did it. Learning logs is something new, so have them log something new that they learned every single day. That way they're kind of knowing that they are learning through this, and they can go back and look and they can see all the different things that they have learned. And number 8 is wait time. This is really a huge thing, and it really relates to the book that we're currently reading that's saying, you know, we need to stop emphasizing that math is a rush, that math is timed. Math is something that we need to go. But math is really something we need to wait. We need to slow down and really emphasize how much we need to be thinking. And so give that wait time to those students in particular and let them figure it out. Don't jump in too quickly. Let them try and solve it. Let them fail and then learn from those failures. Lastly, I have some lists of don'ts. Number 1 was do not constantly try and translate. They need to be exposed to the language. So if your students are failing and you are lucky enough to know their home language, do not try and talk to them in that language, because the whole point of them being exposed in your classroom and not in a bilingual classroom is because they're needing to be exposed to your language. They need to be taught in the English language. So do not try and go back and forth between their English language and their home language. And number 2 was don't approach it as just one educator's job. Seek the help from the ESL teacher. My ESL teacher in my district is absolutely fantastic, and she's always constantly supporting me in my classroom and pulling them with what they need help with most. And I think it's really important that not one person is going to help this student learn English and learn math, learn how to read, learn how to write. It's going to take a team. And it's really important to work as a team so that way those students get the best possible success that they can have. Awesome. Let me know if you guys have any questions about that then. And here are my references for where I got all the information today. Thank you.